Hi, this is Greg Remke. I do workshops on the economics of debate topics and world school motions. This is normally I'm basically economics and applying economics to various resolutions. This presentation, I'm going to focus a little more on nutrition as it's relevant, I think, for the basic needs motion at the WHO tournament and for the NCFCA topic on EU immigration. So rethinking WPD, SAD. WPD is Western Pattern Diet. SAD is Standard American Diet. And the sort of concern here is immigrants, though immigrants are migrating away from poor places to wealthy countries, and there's tremendous economic gains from that. There's also metabolic dangers, nutritional dangers, as migrants transition from traditional diets to the Western diets, which are messed up, I'll argue, due to nutritional policies and one thing and another. And I'm going to try and just give you some resources for those. I have the little Maslow pyramid here because for the basic needs topic, donate after basic needs are met, I'm going to be looking at what are basic needs. If you consider a food a basic need, which you should, just because people in the West have enough food doesn't mean they have the right food. And so a lot of our problems with the pandemic are apparently caused by people eating the wrong things, of disturbing their metabolic health, which leaves them inflamed and getting severe responses to infection from the coronavirus. So I'll talk about some of those ideas. So migration, donations, nutrition. One of the anomalies as poverty declines around the world and billions more in China, India, Indonesia, other countries have access to more food, better quality food. They also are moving into getting more chronic conditions caused by eating the wrong food. So in the world, as more move into the middle class, the chronic conditions that are the main health problem in the US, UK, and Europe are eclipsing the deaths from infectious diseases. So people are still dying from malaria and other infectious diseases, and now the COVID is hitting people around the world. It's the chronic conditions that are the current risk in US and Europe and for those who get infected with COVID, according to people that focus on metabolic disease. So immigration adds to these chronic conditions as migrants transition to Western pattern diets, standard American diets. One of the reasons we want to help developing countries get prosperous, but we want to educate or help them get educated that buying a bunch of food from Western food companies might lead them down the wrong path that it has led so many poor people in the US that are eating fast food or junk food from convenience stores. In addition, inadequate vitamin C contributes to disease. Of course, if you're getting enough fish and you're getting foods rich with vitamin D, maybe you're okay. But people who migrate from places with a lot of sun, Central America, South America, Middle East, North Africa, Africa, and go to Europe or go to the US, they're moving away from the sun. You can't get enough vitamin D to be healthy unless you're genetically different, like people with red hair who genetically get a lot more vitamin D from sun. So nutrition policies in the US and EU that say, don't take supplements or take very modest supplements, they're misleading people who need a far more vitamin D to be healthy. Again, according to research over the recent decades. So the basic needs is the WHO topic. You think of that as, well, food, clothing, shelter, safety, but basic needs is more than just food. I mean, we want poor people to have enough food to not starve and to have their nutritional needs met. But it turns out having enough food, if people eat the wrong food, that's how they get into medical problems. And I'll talk about that in the next slide with links. So the argument is the ongoing pandemic. Most people are already have immunity, partial immunity from T cells or antibodies, or get mildly sick if they get the COVID. But some people get severely sick. And those are generally people with poor metabolic health. what are the numbers? Like 90% of people who die have comorbidities from studies in Italy. And those comorbidities, cardiovascular, poor cardiovascular health, diabetes, obesity, those are tied to eating the wrong food, amazingly enough, eating food that inflames the metabolic system. In addition, there's another angle to this that's sort of curious. Dr. Georgia Ede has an article in Psychology Today, as well as YouTube videos, Our Descent into Madness, Modern Diets and the Global Mental Health Crisis. Dr. Ede worked in various colleges, and she says there's an epidemic of mental illness, of students coming to the clinics there trying to deal with anxiety and other things. And on the one hand, you might think, well, this is because, Trump causes this, or political turmoil causes this, or racism causes this. She argues that people eating poorly cause this. People who are not getting essential fats what the brain needs to be metabolically healthy. And you can get those fats from plant foods, mostly, although you need supplements, or you can get them from meat. But if people aren't eating the right food, not only their immune system metabolic system is inflamed, but their brain is in a sense too. So maybe this is why everyone's fighting on social media over politics. So we'd like to look inside of ourselves to find out if we're healthy, but we can't see in our immune system. I have scales that test for body fat and water and other things in my body. I'll talk about more technologies to let you look inside. But to give you a background on this story, I mean, you may not know me, you may not trust the sort of wild claims I'm making, but you can find out more online. People disagree. There's different factions and sides on this bad health. Some say it's fast food, some say it's meat, some say it's this. Fat Fiction documentary is making the case that the whole idea that fat is bad for us, that we got to move from butter to margarine or whole milk to skim milk, stop having cream, stop eating eggs, all that they argue is based on poor research that was done decades ago that influenced federal policy, influenced the federal nutritional guidelines, and then the EU, and then the World Health Organization. Fat is not bad for us. The argument is, and you can see the trailer is free, and I think the movie is available. There's also other movies online that I'll show on the next slide on this as well. The Diet Doctor podcast is interviews with various medical doctors, researchers, nutritionists. It's very sort of high level in terms of scholarship. People are telling their own experiences, but they're also giving insights into the latest research. These are people in the low carb world who see carbohydrates and refined sugars as the problem and snacking, and they see healthy fats as the solution, but they're trying to be fair and balanced about this as well. I started in this watching low carb down under videos. Nina Teicholz and her Big Fat Surprise book, I started reading a couple years ago, but then in March of this year, I sort of gained weight up to 230 pounds. My scale told me I was obese under BMI and body fat levels. So I thought, my dad got type 2 diabetes. Maybe I'm on that path too. And reading these things, I found out that you could have insulin resistance some 10 years before you're diagnosed with even pre-diabetes. So I started worry about that. I've never been on a diet, but just watching these videos and listening to people, I got to thinking about what I was eating and started losing weight, started shifting, stopped eating raisin bran in the morning and more often had bacon and eggs, or maybe didn't eat till noon. And for me, it led to reducing my body fat, losing 40 pounds. And I think I'm more nutritionally healthy, although I don't have a continuous glucose monitor to document that. But the argument I'm making is don't worry about dieting, research this topic, learn conflicting different views on this. So instead of people believing that just being overweight is because of lack of willpower and eating too much and not exercising, these guys are saying that is wrong. That's bad advice. Instead, people are eating the wrong food. They're getting these cravings because they're eating sweets and carbohydrates. when you eat modest amounts of food. If you eat fat or salmon, you get full. You eat till you're full and stop eating. And you don't have to eat, all day and lots of small meals. Uh, People used to eat dinner and not eat till breakfast. The people calling for low carb diets aren't calling for anything radical. They're just saying return to the diets Americans had in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. If you look at videos and pictures of high school kids, other people, they weren't fat. There were a few overweight people, but most people were normal weight. We're heavy now because we switched our diet, because the government pushed it, because special interests pushed it, because of the food industry following federal mandates and guidelines, shifted their food to be low fat. But when you make stuff low fat, you're adding more sugar, you're adding more carbohydrates, flavoring, and eating the wrong food is what they're arguing. So there's plenty of bad guys in this. You can blame the government, you can blame the food industry, you can blame the pharmaceutical industry, plenty of blame to go around. Nutrition Coalition tries to gather the research on why we should shift federal guidelines. And these are destructive because they influence what the free lunches that kids get in school, which are way too much sugar and fat, or sugar and carbohydrates. They influence what is served in elder care homes, served through Medicare, what doctors, give because of the federal and state guidelines. One of the videos I recommend here is a recent one with a doctor in Portland, Oregon, and she argues that these continuous glucose monitors that people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes use to monitor their glucose levels to decide how much insulin they need. She's saying these are important devices that far more people should take. People that think they're healthy now, some 90% of people with prediabetes haven't been diagnosed. You should find out what's happening in your bloodstream. When you eat I used to eat, like a bowl of Raisin Bran or have some cookies, and I'd feel like I was unplugged and, out of energy. I didn't connect what I ate to how I felt. Until I stopped eating those things, and now I don't feel exhausted the way I used to. But they're saying that you eat the wrong foods, your glucose spikes, your insulin spikes to deal with that, and after years or decades of these insulin spikes, you're causing insulin resistance, and you're leading to various metabolic conditions that are causing some 80% of the chronic diseases that Americans and Europeans suffer from, and that people in India, Mexico, Brazil, Peru are starting to suffer from as they eat too much of these refined foods or sugars that taste good or appealing but are damaging over time to your health. I have more posts on this on the Economic Thinking webpage, where I'm not an expert. If you sent me $20 for this nutritional advice, I guess they could throw me in jail because I don't have a permit to do that. But people who do have credentials to do that, they'll lose their credentials if they recommend high fats, because that's not accepted. So it's a really weird mixture of government policy, the establishment, what you learn about nutrition, studying to be a doctor or getting a nutrition degree in college. The new research says much of that is misguided. And don't trust me, trust these people, these doctors that do research on this. Much of this comes from in the last 5 or 10 years as doctors have discovered through their patients how people are, in 3 to 6 days, changing your diet can stop your diabetes, can reverse or put it in remission. It's astonishing. Thousands of people have come off their medications simply by changing their diet. It's an amazing story and one worth researching, although, don't immediately stop taking your medications. Talk to your doctor, as all these people, or find a doctor who understands the new research on the health benefits of eating healthy fats. So don't diet, research nutrition. You can go on the Diet Doctor. If you go to YouTube and search for Diet Doctor, there's a bunch of podcasts on keto, carnivore, the science of fasting, and a whole range of things where they're trying to be balanced. And again, they're talking to credentialed medical doctors, medical researchers, Brett Scher, who's the host of this, is also a medical doctor. They all have their own personal stories. They have stories from their clients, and they have stories from the latest research. The Low Carb Down Under podcast or videos, I started watching those from different conferences, mostly in Denver and some in Australia. And you can read these different doctors and what they've discovered about insulin and metabolic health. Oops, wrong way. And then also CrossFit. CrossFit, turns out thousands of doctors have become CrossFit members. Many have started CrossFit clubs. So CrossFit Health has a whole section of presentations. These are partly doctor training programs that doctors can take these courses to get their medical credentials. That I guess they have to keep taking courses, but they're also available for the general public, and you can watch some of these free on YouTube. Also, don't diet, go to the movies. Well, not movies, actually documentaries, but you can watch documentaries. This one, Fat Chance, on the medical benefits for health, for exercise, for people that have increased the fat in their diet, increased the healthy fats in their diet. So there's a bunch of others: Critical of Cereal, Critical of Carbs, The Big Fat Fix, Fathead, and others. So number of movies to recommend. Again, documentaries to learn more about this. And also there are documentaries on the other side, critical of fat, calling for more carbs, low carbs, vegan, and vegetarian. So I'm arguing, debating basic needs, food, the kinds of food for the Winter Holidays Open tournament in Europe, as well as nutrition in general for debate for the pandemic. There's a book called Resolved by Robert Latan of the Brookings Institution. Debate can revolutionize education and help save our democracy. Debate should be an integral part of every high school course on American history, European history, on nutrition. What your teacher tells you about nutrition, what the textbook tells you, that's fine. But debaters are always looking for the other side, looking for more perspectives. And so health and nutrition should be discussed and debated in medical school, in nutritional courses in college and high school. And Dr. Latan looks at income inequality, wealth inequality issues, and other issues, but argues that debate is a format to allow us to better explore these controversies that are so important and are so lost in the political battles going on in the US and European Union among populists, left, right, one thing and another. So a moral obligation to help others is the WHO motion. The role of nutrition in human flourishing. Basic needs is what the WHO topic says. But the higher needs we have, the need for self-esteem, the need for self-actualization, part of Aristotle's eudaimonism, human flourishing. You can get that out of the, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The role of migration, is there a freedom to move that's part of that for people to escape dangerous and deadly places where they're suffering? Is there an obligation for countries to accept immigrants and refugees? Those are part of the EU immigration debate and the US immigration debate. And there's a brief discussion of Maslow's being values. He uses sort of the metaphor of vitamins. We need basically basic vitamins to be healthy: vitamin C, vitamin D, and lack of vitamin D I've mentioned as part of the health problems around the world. But he also argues similar sorts of being vitamins are needed for people to be self-actualized. And we're all different, just like we're nutritionally different. Our spirits are different. We have different callings. Some people to be an engineer, others an artist, others a lawyer searching for justice. These values that we crave, we have to have jobs, callings, work that connect with these being values that we need. And that's what Maslow discusses. That's what we all have to discover, sort of listening to our inner voices. For Christians, the calling that God has for you. For atheists or anybody who's a psychologist, those things that make us flourish. Hopefully you'll find this interesting. I found it interesting, and hopefully we can make the world a healthier, wealthier place through more economic freedom and through better nutrition and through researching nutritional and public health policies. Thank you very much. If you have questions, you can contact me through Economic Thinking. Thanks.